At first, I always thought power balance in tabletop RPGs was kind of a weird thing. I mean, why are players complaining about their cleric is too good at healing? You guys are on the same team! Act like it! I played cooperative board games before, like Pandemic, Dresden Files, Dead Panic, Dead of Winter, Zombicide, Zombies, Apocalypse, Zombicide, Black Plague. A lot of zombie games, come to think of it. I guess you could say there's an infestation? I'll let myself out now. Anyway, in cooperative board games, I've never had power balance be a big issue, so why is it a problem in cooperative RPGs? For that matter, why is the GM complaining about the power of the characters? You are literally more powerful than gods. You control fate and reality. You are so powerful, you do not have stats. But joking aside, I do think there are some legitimate problems here, so let's take a moment to deconstruct the issue. The first issue I'll talk about is the conflict that occurs between the players. Earlier I said that this problem doesn't usually happen between the players in a cooperative board game, and I think the reason is that there's usually some cognitive dissonance between the player and their own character in a board game because they were just handed one, whereas in an RPG, they have to make their own. So what that means is that if their character is ineffective in an RPG, some people think, oh, that must mean I built my character wrong. Also, I think that part of the issue is that people play in order to feel powerful and be badass and grow their own character, and don't care at all about the narrative or working with the others at the table. All they care about is if someone is doing even more badass things, then it seems to take away their thunder. Or if there's a PC that can do everything they can do, only better, then it makes the player feel like they're useless. Often, only one person in the group wants to be the hacker or the wheel, because they want to have a specialization that they own. However, because they have to work together to solve a problem, and if they're focused on their character being amazing, then the rest of the team is not going to help them, and that's a pretty toxic group to be playing in. And it can just kill the narrative. When was the last time you saw an action or adventure movie where the characters were just arguing about how awesome they were? I mean, where was that scene in Lord of the Rings where Legolas and Gimli spent the entire battle just bickering about who has the most kills? I mean, other than all those scenes where it did happen, or like, what if in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 people were arguing about who gets the pilot of the ship? At least they were arguing in character. My point still stands. Part of the problem comes from what I like to call alpha gamers. I usually don't have a problem in my games with power gamers per se. I think that if someone wants to have a capable character, I don't think that that's an issue. My problem is when I get an alpha gamer who is someone who wants to be the most damaging person in the group. And oh god, if you get two of those people at this table and they keep trying to one-up each other, it sucks. Oh my god. Legolas and Gimli were the alpha gamers. No wonder Sauron kept trying to kill them. I classify power gamers into two groups, good ones and bad ones. The good ones just view the game differently than I do. I, as a player, don't enjoy endlessly poring over splat books to optimize a build, but they do, and I can't really fault them for that. I appreciate that they like the challenge and will complain if the encounters are, quote, too easy. Then there's the bad ones. The whiners. I think the reason why people hate these power gamers is because these people are never happy. They whine that the encounters are not tailor-made for them. They whine that the enemies are not weak to their attacks. They complain about not having enough magic items. They complain about other people having too many magic items. These people will complain about everything. I didn't play in this one game, but a friend did, where there was a paladin who was a whiner. This guy complained to the GM all the time, and the GM gave special exemptions for his character just to get him to shut up. So, he got to cast wizard spells, and also could backstab as a rogue, and also started off with more wealth than the rest of the other players combined, and extra stat points, and extra magic items, and also was still fucking whining. And the GM at the end of all this was like, why is he still complaining? I gave him all these free things. And I'm like, you idiot, that's why he does it all the time. Also, am I the only GM who had to deal with this issue? I had another weird situation where all of my PCs had made tall characters, and all of them wanted to be known as the tallest one in the group. So they kept making taller and taller characters until they were running around with these freakishly weird proportions, like 10-foot tall, rail thin, 100 pounds? I had half of a mind to start role-playing it as, the village people are running around town, when suddenly they notice several long shadows casting it in darkness. They look to the setting sun to see several freakish abominations coming over the hill. Are they humans? Elves? Perhaps they once were. Daddy, what's that? Get in the house, Junior. But what? I said get in the house! What do you mean I have disadvantage to persuade the blacksmith? I mean, even in single-player video games, you still have to balance the game. If there was an ability that instantly killed enemies for no cost, people would always use that ability to the exclusion of everything else. So, I think balance among the classes is important so they don't invalidate each other. When a few options appear that are above the power curve, it makes it so that way those options always get chosen. Then there's power balance issues between the GM and the players. Usually if it's just a difficulty problem, the easiest solution is just to ramp up the challenge. And the DMG encounters are scalable, so instead of running 2 medium difficulty monsters and 3 easy ones, you can run 2 hard and 3 medium. The only challenge that comes in is when one of your players is trying to play the game on hard mode and the other player wants to play it on easy mode. If you set the difficulty too high to challenge one player, it ends up with another player getting vaporized in a fight. Dungeons & Dragons is a mostly well-balanced game, at least out of the core rulebooks. I think the quadratic wizards, linear fighters, is a bit of an issue. The homebrew and supplemental stuff is hit and miss. Mostly miss. The big issue is that high-level Magic and D&D can be game-breaking, so you might have to ban some things. If your players are cutting out chunks of content that you can't deal with, like scrying to figure out where the major villain is, or resurrecting someone who's supposed to be dead, or transmute the ending boss into a frog and drop him off a fucking cliff, I worked so hard for that finale, you asshole. Although in those instances, it's usually my fault for not designing the encounters properly, or not changing the narrative to suit the player's decisions, or not letting them know up front what I'd allow. Overpowered characters is yet to be a serious problem for me, although I recently mostly GM 5th edition and had GM'd a little of 4th edition. 5th edition is pretty well balanced, while 4th edition was a game that was so finely balanced you could drop the motherfucker off a fucking skyscraper and that shit wouldn't so much as have a scratch. I have yet to come across the I ascended into godhood at level 4 problem. Power balance is never going to be an exact science. When people complain about balance in RPGs, I'm a little skeptical sometimes. After all, how can you really balance summoning an army of plague rats versus turning into a sky lizard? Do you just compare damage? What about defenses, HP? However, there's another Y factor that I haven't addressed that some of you probably have been waiting for me to talk about. Role-playing. Sometimes imbalance can be used for good reasons for role-playing. For example, a paladin against undead and demons is going to be super effective. But it totally makes sense narratively, so many people don't mind. Or, that's a big part of the reason why a lot of people roll for stats, is to add realism or surprise to the game, so that all the characters are not cookie cutouts, and the imbalance is what makes it appealing. I mean, I'm sure that's why a lot of people roll for stats, and definitely not because rolling for stats statistically gives higher numbers than point buy, and people definitely wouldn't lie and opt to use one system or another purely due to them trying to make a Mary Sue who was good at everything, and definitely wouldn't get pissed off at other players at the table if they rolled high, and definitely wouldn't roll until they got really high stats and write them down on beat up tattered scrap paperboards they would use on all their characters and carry around with them for 10 years because that was the one day they got 3 18s! Definitely.